All right, several things that I want to, and you know, we've been talking about this idea, ignorance on fire, and when I said that, I thought, wow, ignorance is an offensive word for most everybody. If somebody said, are you ignorant, or you're ignorant, most people get very offended. It's like saying, well, you think I'm dumb or stupid, and there's not anywhere near the same. Ignorance just simply means to be ignoring something, and every one of us we choose to ignore a lot of things. I mean, we really do. We choose to ignore just simply means to pay no attention to. So when you exercise ignorance, means you haven't paid any attention to something. And I guess, could we not all say that I'm ignorant? I mean, if you go to talking about a computer, I would raise both hands. I'm ignorant. I mean, I punch buttons, and like I said, I punch buttons on mine, and that's just gone crazy. So I'm ignorant, and I don't feel ashamed by saying that I'm ignorant of that. I've ignored the idea. It's like I had a guy work for me a long time ago, and I said, I'll teach you how to do front-end work, and I'll show you how to run and operate a front-end machine. And he said, I don't want to learn that. And I said, why? I said, you can make more money. He said, I don't want to do that. He said, I just don't want to do that work. I said, okay. He chose to be ignorant. So there's nothing wrong with that. And we do that. We choose to be ignorant. And ignorance on fire, what I'm talking about is many things that we have been taught because of a belief. And we choose to believe that, even though many times the truth may be sticking out at us. It may be trying to show its face to us. You know, here it is, look at it. We choose not to look at it and to remain ignorant. And I always use that example of the rapture. And people so embrace that idea, hold on to that idea, even though it's a lie. And they choose to embrace a lie, call the lie the truth, and therefore they are ignoring the truth. And so they're ignorant. So ignorance, when I talk about ignorance on fire, is when you're passionate about what you're ignorant about. It's infectious. It really is. I'm speaking to myself about that. That's how I was. I was ignorant to a lot of things. It wasn't that I was just ignoring them. Many times I didn't know, and as a result, I still ignored the truth. But when you start to find the truth, you get passionate about something, and even if it's a lie, people get excited over the passion. And many charismatic type people who have a charisma, who can sell you oceanfront property in Connecticut or North Dakota. We'll sell you some oceanfront property in North Dakota, and they're passionate about it, very charismatic. I wouldn't buy it, but you buy it.
George Strait had a good song about it.
So anyway, these are, I'm just going to hit on some words this morning that we have, for the most part, been extremely ignorant about. And these words are not difficult to see, they're not difficult to understand if or as we look at them from the Hebrew code. And the reason I do that, and I say that, and I promote that, is going to the source, going to the horse's mouth, going to the origination of something, going to its origin. And so to me that's not difficult. But it is difficult if ignorance on fire has sold you an idea and you embrace that idea with your whole heart. And most of us do. I have, and I know that you have. So I'm going to talk about some words, and two of the words I'm going to talk about is angel and angle. Scripture is big with both. We have all embraced the idea that angels are some kind of creatures that are created and live out there somewhere in space. And they could very well be, but I can tell you this, if we use the Hebrew Scriptures to validate that idea, we would come up with a blank, because the idea that Scripture validates are the angles, the 12 angles of the astrological wheel, and how those angles, through the energy of the sun, hit the earth and create. And so it's the angles of creation. And here's a word that I will use. I kind of introduced it at the end of the service last week. And I'm going to use this word in its first usage of this word, and I'll show you some things about it, how it's associated to the passage that it's used with. And I promise you, I guarantee you, it is not at all what you have been taught and what you've been told, okay? And I think you can see that. So I'll just jump in right here on Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. Just those two verses. And most of us, I'll ask you some questions and throw some ideas out at you, and you can work with me and see what you get from it. Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 4 are the end of what we would call the Sabbath day of creation, okay? In other words, the 7-day creation didn't end in Genesis chapter 1. You only had 6 days or facets. The Hebrew word for day is yom. The Hebrew word yom means facets of creation or creative energy. That's what that word means. It got associated to the word day. It's also associated with the word extended life, or the power of life, the power to live. So yom is more associated with live. But if you look at the word day and its association with a 24-hour period of time, there's life in that. That rotation of the sun is where life comes from. So anyway, verse 1, it says, the heavens and the earth. And you will see the association of verse 1 of chapter 2 and the association of verse 1 of chapter 1. And the subject matter would be in both of those places, heaven and earth. Heaven and earth are not what we have been told or what we embrace. Okay? And that, again, I'll try to explain that to where maybe you can't argue with it, but maybe you can. Maybe you will anyway. But you'll have to notice the similarity. And look, verse 1 says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host. That word host in the Hebrew is tasada. Tasada. That's how that word is pronounced. It's spelled with the glip. The last of, well, I don't have it on the board. Let me see if I can find it, and I can put it up here for you. The tasada is the Hebrew number 9. Number 90, I'm sorry. I want to use 3 glips this morning more than others. 9, the Hebrew glip 9, which is teot. The Hebrew glip 90, which is tasada. And the Hebrew glip 900, which is final tasada. And how those 3 glips are so used in such a beautiful fashion that we will be able to understand them maybe in a better way than we have before. So this word tasada starts out with that glip. Tasada starts out with that glip. Tasada. I'm sorry. I'll get right here in just a minute. And the word, how many of you have, well, let me read this again. I'm sorry, let's go back here and I get my thoughts, try to organize them a little more here. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and the host of all them, and on the Sabbath day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the Sabbath day from all his works which he had made. Now, how many of you have read that, and instead of reading Sabbath, like the number 7, read Sabbath? Sabbath. How many of you read Sabbath into it? Most people are taught to think Sabbath in it because it's on the Sabbath that God rested. Is that right? Isn't that how you associate it? So, let me say this to you. The word Sabbath in Hebrew is not even used. It's not mentioned until the middle of the book of Exodus. It's not even brought into the picture. Its first usage is in the book of Exodus in the 16th chapter. It's the first place that the word Sabbath. Now, here again, we have entire organizations or religious communities that are built off this one word. The confusion between Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, and Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H. Huge difference in the 2 words, but yet we jumble them together. We just kind of muddle them. For instance, this word Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, this word actually means complete. Or or you could say perfect. And so what it's given us the idea is that this number, 7, is a complete or a perfect number. And when we look at it, we begin to realize that that number 7 is used all the way through Scripture. It is used phenomenally. 7 lamps on the candlestick, 7 colors in the rainbow, 7 musical tones on the scale. It's just over and over and over. 7 foundational stones. Just all kinds of things that you will see when you begin to look at that word. It takes the 7 endocrine glands to build a physical body. So when you see this word, this is the end or the completion or the perfection of what God had done. And it has to do with creativity. It doesn't have to do with rest. It has more to do with peace and freedom. So if we can understand that the seventh, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, means peace and freedom and completion and totality. Not the same as Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H, okay? Which is another word which is different. And I won't take all the time to do it. I thought I would, but I don't think I will. I'll show you this picture. You can't hardly see it, and I know you can't see it. But these are the 27 of the Hebrew glyphs. There's 9 in this row, 9 in this row, and 9 in this row. That's how they lay them out. There are actually 22 glyphs in Hebrew that make up the base of the Hebrew alphabet, with 5 finals, which represent your senses. The 5 physical senses on the outward or on the skin. You have 5 senses on your skin. You have 2 senses that are eternal. Okay, so it'll give you a total of 7. So you have all those, that gives you that total of 27. Now I realize that might just be semantics, but it's not when you really get it. Because if you take the one off the end of the first row and the one off the beginning, actually what you have in the middle are 7. The reason I did that is the first one is the Aleph. It refers to the source. The Aleph, actually, many people say it's God. Why? Because it is number 1. I mean, most everybody would say God is number 1. But what happens over here on the other end of the scale, where you have number 9? And the number 9 in Hebrew means feminine energy. Okay? You can say that. You could just say that. If you understood that, you would realize that that number means feminine energy. So that when you look at this as it builds, I would say it was important if a person could memorize 1 through 9 in Hebrew and understand that those glyphs and those are the root or the base of all gematria. So you can get an idea from, like this word 1, if it's used, that refers to God. This right here would refer to God and humanity. The reason why it's dual. There's 2 glyphs there. This is the male. You could call this the penis. And this is the female. You could call this the womb. Male, female. Duality. 2. You have a male, female hemisphere in your brain, right? So see, you can be 1 and 2. And don't get confused by that. You got to realize that you are a duality. It doesn't take you and your spouse to make you 2. You're 2 and 1. And we should all know that, because don't we always have these split decisions? You know, have you ever noticed that something's pulling you this way and something's pulling you this way? Have you ever had that? We have it all the time, don't we? Well, it's because of this. And then when you come down to the 3rd row in Hebrew, you come back to the Trinity. Light, life, and love. You come back to the 3, or the complete. So it's a cycle. This is the completion of the cycle. You follow me? This is where we get all the Hebrew glyphs that have 3 characters in them. 100, 200, 300, all the way down to 900. All of them glyphs will refer back to the base.
So,
full circle.
So the Alpha, the God, the beginning, to the female aspect, everything in between it creates the duality that you get in 10.
Yes.
The whole flow of all those others between 1 and 9, the female and the aspect and the alpha, the God aspect, brings us
Full circle.
full circle to the duality that we really
Yes.
are.
Exactly. Exactly. Full circle. One, this is God. This is a single cell. What happens when you split a single cell? What happens when you split a single cell? What does it do? Exactly, and then it goes from 2 to what? Immediately. 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16, and does it immediately. It does it faster than you can imagine. Within just a few seconds, it goes into the thousands, and then into the billions, and all of a sudden you have a human body being created in the womb of a woman. Now see, all of this is, and that's why I constantly say that the Bible, if we go to the base of it, the Bible is an analogical, physical book about the temple that God built. Now how did God build it? He started off with a single cell. That's what number 9 represents, the single cell. And that single cell split itself off. That's why all of these 10 through 90 have to do with duality. They all have to do with this in the physical dimension. So when you see those glyphs used in what we would call a word, you can start to help define that word by understanding how that glyph is used in that word. You follow what I'm saying? Just like if I take this word right here in Hebrew, Ba, Beth, Rash, Shin, Aleph, Shin, Yod, Ta. If I took those glyphs and that word in Hebrew is in the beginning. Should have been translated at birthing. But at birthing is the beginning of your physical manifestation. Do you understand that? In other words, you physically begin to be a temple built without the sound of a hammer and a saw in your mother's womb. Right? No, nobody heard any knocking or board cutting going on in there, but you're being built. You were being built. What were you being built from? A single cell. And that single cell all of a sudden did this miraculous thing. I mean, science now can see and they can talk about how it's done, but they don't know how it's done. They can talk about how it's done. This splits off to this, and all of a sudden it creates this. We don't know how or why or whatever. But that's how it starts, a single cell. That's what that Hebrew glyph means. So when you have this one, that's the last in this row, and then you have this one, and you start out right here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 glyphs between there. You understand? This is God, this is the single cell, and from that, what does God do? He creates humanity. Now, the Bible, and I will say this, I will throw this out. I would say that there's probably not any way in me living 10 lifetimes that I can extract the depth of this wisdom in the compilation of these glyphs in the first 12 chapters of the book of Genesis. It's just that deep. It's deeper than we can even imagine. And I get kind of frustrated at myself because I get so bogged down in Genesis 1, 2, or 3. Because I can just spend forever there and you keep getting different things out of it. It's the depth of it is there. That's why I say it is the foundation. And if the foundation is laid wrong, if we don't have the house built on the right foundation, Jesus gave us a perfect illustration. He said the storms of life will come. I don't care who you are, how you live. You can live as holy as you think holy is. In other words, I don't do. In other words, you're miserable. God, if you get stuck in all that don't do, and you're miserable. I'm telling you, you're miserable. Can't do this. I remember a time, I was young years ago, in my late 20s, and we went to a church, and this church had this old-timey Church of God preacher who was a part of the snake handling group back in the 30s, 40s. He was in his 80s or 90s. Old fella, white-headed guy. That ain't got no bearing on being old, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, I remember him, and what I remember was I thought, wow, he's a good-looking character. He's old, but he still maintains some good looks and this, that, and other. But his wife, bless her heart, she didn't have any makeup on. She looked dressed real drab. She looked like she had a hornet's nest on her head. I'd never seen that before. She had this big roll, just like the hornet's nest. It was a big old hornet's nest on top of her head. And bless her heart, she was just as prune-faced as you could be. I mean, she didn't have no joy whatsoever, but bless God, she's holy. And you know what I thought? If that's what holy is, I don't need none of that. I certainly don't want my wife to look like that. If that's holy, I don't want that. And I know that's disrespectful. I'm sorry if people hear it or see it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to make a point that religion sold us a bill of goods. We embraced it, bought it hook, line, and sinker. And if that's what we were striving for, our heart wasn't in it. It wasn't. You didn't want to be like that. You didn't want to look like that. You didn't want to be that prune. Bless her heart, well, I can't say that. People would get upset. But she hasn't enjoyed life. It doesn't look like she's enjoyed life ever. I would hope that she has sometime. But that's holy, that we put these ideas before people and then expect them to embrace it. And most people have a hard time with that, and I know it and you know it. So anyway, sorry about that. Don't mean to be disrespectful, and I apologize that it is. I'm just trying to say that you can enjoy life. We should enjoy life. We should learn to laugh. We should learn to embrace life and live life. But not let life take advantage of us and destroy us, because it will, and it can. And that's what I'm trying to say, is life is so filled with this kind of potential, this kind of an ability. And it's not that it's wrong, it's what it can do if it gets in charge of you, instead of you being in charge of it. So, anyway, this particular glip, if you break it down and you look at the individual characters, that's number 2. That comes right after the Aleph. That's number 2. Beth, we all in our mind associate. We've heard of a lady named Beth, right? We usually think of that name Beth as house, which is correct. It actually means it's the container. This is the opening character in the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible don't open up with number 1. It opens up with number 2. Why? Because it's referring to the human carcass. It's the temple, the house God's building here. Now when the baby is pushed out of the womb and we begin to see it functioning in Genesis chapter 2, we begin to see it in a greater light, a different light. So here we go. The host, and I wanted you to look at this word with me. Host. Host, I want to put it up here as a matter of fact. I'm going to use this glip right here, the Tasada. That's number 9. That's what it has as far. And it has the Beth, number 2. And it has the Aleph, number 1. Now, when you do gematria, and I recommend people do it, you got 90, 2, 3, right? 93. Now, then when you break that down, 9 and 3 is how much?
Looks like 12.
12. And when you break that down, you have what?
3.
3. That's the Gimiel. That's spirit, soul, and body. That's light, life, and love. So that's the manifest. So now then, this that was unmanifest, i.e. God, now through building the temple, a Beth, a house, a container, now you have this particular glip, and that you can associate it with that which is manifest, that which is brought forth into reality. Now that's just taking this glip, host. Now this word host it doesn't refer, let me see, I think I wrote definition down for it somewhere. Host, it means, listen to this, it means a mass, it means persons, more than one, it means worship, and it means appointed in time. Now, I would say most of us, because I looked at this in several different religious commentaries and dictionaries, and you know how they all associated host, H-O-S-T? They all associated this word host with warring angels. A host of warring angels. So everywhere I saw that glyph and that word, it was always associated with thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of warring angels. And always had that idea of war in it. You can't find that idea of war or competition anywhere in the entire Hebrew alphabet. It is not there. What is there is cooperation and unity in everything that's shown. As a matter of fact, they found out that everything in the universe that we can see, even right now, functions on that idea of cooperation and unity. Not war and not anger and not competition. War and anger and competition is man's idea birthed out of religion. Didn't used to be that way. You go back beyond 6,000 or 7,000 years and you will find nations that were never against nations. You will find nations that were in unity with nations. You take the Alexandrian library that the Christian church under the directions of Catholicism burnt to the ground. It burnt material and it destroyed information that come from all quarters of the world. They had information from every place on the globe. Well, my big question would be, how did they get it and where did they go to get it? And you can find that is true if you go to the Mayans or you go over to the other side of the world on the eastern seaboard where you have shamanism, shamans, you have Buddhism, the Chinese. All of these nations were in unity with that. They weren't fighting each other. They weren't killing each other. That come about through religion. Religion introduced that idea, and through that idea they began to take words and take those words in Scripture and use those words to validate their lie. Just misuse or misappropriation or falsely defining words. And I mean, I know it's so hard. You know, in this area, what we call this the Bible Belt of the South, in this area, religion dominates. I mean, it has everybody. It dominates your thinking. It dominates our mind. And when I say something, I say the King James Bible is so grossly mistranslated. It ain't just the King James Bible. My goodness, you can go back to the Latin. You can see them starting to manipulate and twist things in the Latin. You can actually see it even in Hebrew or Judaism. I put it that way because, you know, here, goodness, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago I did a teaching on the Hebrew and what is a Hebrew? Well, who are the chosen? And my goodness, it's not hard to try to find certain people that think they are the chosen people of God, but y'all are not. You know, y'all are either just Gentiles or heathens or demonites, I guess. I don't know. But we fail to get off. We fail to realize that everybody is the chosen of God. Every human being that's breathing, smelling, tasting, seeing, you're the chosen of God. And that's what the ancient Hebrew validates. It proves that all of these things are true, that we are the chosen of God. So when you look at this word host and understand what it's talking about, I will put it right here in the middle. I want to show you this. Okay. That's the monad. That's a big circle. And when you put that in it, and here's what happens if you start to put angles in it. I want you to see. I did those angles last week, and I'm not going to do them this week. But y'all know what that is right there? That's a left 90-degree angle, right? Okay? Now look at this one right here. Now that one is what? A right 90-degree angle. And this one right here would be, you could call it a upside down left 90-degree angle, right? And you could do this one and do it like this, and you could call it a right upside down, 90, but they're all 90-degree angles. You have to understand they are angles. But I want you to see this. If you'll notice, what did I build by doing that? I built the most important glip that goes back infinitum. In other words, you cannot go back far enough to where that you can find the first usage of this glip. Did you know that? Predates time, as far as we know time. In other words, everything that they uncover. Steve, would you go out there and look in the floorboard or in the seat and bring me my cell phone? I want to read something to you, and it's in my phone. So I want to read you something about this particular glip. This is the oldest glip that we have. Now, how do you associate this glip? How is it in your minds? Can you tell me how it is in your mind?
Jesus on the cross.
Exactly. Exactly. That was the words. And say that again, Beverly. Jesus on the cross. That's how we all look at it. But we didn't realize that it was ancient to that. We didn't realize that it way predated, supposedly, the idea of Jesus on the cross. When Steve gets me my phone, I want to read you something that was written in a book. And this was written in this book about 150 years ago in this particular book.
There you go, sir.
Okay. See if I can pull this up. Okay. Now, this is going to be difficult, but I want to read you this. This is out of a book that was written, I think, in right around 1890 or so. It says, the value of the cross as a Christian symbol is supposed to date from the time when Jesus Christ was crucified. How many of y'all would kind of on the page with me? Listen to this. And yet, listen to this. In the Christian iconography of the catacombs, no figure of a man appears upon a cross during the first 7 centuries. Did you get that? Now, if that was the symbol of Christianity, i.e. Jesus on a cross, why is it that not anywhere in any material, in any book, in any iconography, is there not a picture of a Jesus on a cross until the 7th century? 700 years later. Now listen to this. It says, there are all forms of crosses except that, the alleged starting point of the new religion. That was not the initial, but the final form of the crucifix. During some 6 or 7 centuries after the Christian era, the foundation of the Christian religion in a crucified Redeemer is entirely absent from Christian art. Now, I don't know if that strikes you. That hit me like right between the eyes. I thought, wow, if that's the symbol of Christianity and Jesus hanging on it was its root symbol, how come it wasn't in any kind of picture form or any iconography until the 7th century? And here's what they said. It says, the earliest known form of the crucified Redeemer, the earliest known form of the human figure on a cross is the crucifix presented by Pope Gregory the Great. This is the first time it ever got in the 7th century. Pope Gregory the Great, he gave it to Queen Theodolinda, something like that. Can't hardly see this, it's real small, of Lombardy. Now in the church, and this is now still in the church of St. John at Monza. It didn't even appear. When I read that, I thought, dear, mercy, mercy, mercy. And I personally have based so much of my teaching and my thinking on Jesus being the original crucified Savior, or the original crucifix of a man on a cross, surely it got to go back to that period. And it's not there. It's just not in any literature, not in any Christian literature, until the 7th century. And at that time, then all of a sudden it begins to appear. And all of a sudden that's where you begin. Now I realize, and I realize and I hope at the same time that throws a great big flag in your mind and really causes you to think. And I hope what it does is causes you to think that you want to go back and challenge that. That's what I do. That's what I don't get mad because I hear something that I can't validate or I can't prove my belief. I want to go back then and see if that be true, if that's a lie, if that's just something somebody said. And so that's what I hope and I encourage all of you to do. If you can't swallow that kind of appeal, then cough it up, put it on the shelf, or do some research on your own and just find out to see what you can come up with. So when we begin to, now I want to put something else up on the board. I'm going to try to read this to you here. This is an angle. Okay? This angle. Okay. This angle right here is the angle of Taurus. Let's see, I've got that backwards, haven't I? That's not how I wanted to do that. I'm sorry. Here, let me redo that. I got my angle wrong. Isn't that something? I got my angle wrong. Yeah, here we go. Now look at this. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Now that I got my angle right. Do you realize this angle right here is Taurus. This portion of this angle, 33 degrees, is Taurus. And this portion of this angle is what? Libra, right? And many times we don't see the correlation of these angles. In other words, this one has to do with, what did I call this just now? Did I call it Taurus?
Yeah.
Did I call it Taurus?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I should have said Aries. This is Aries. This is Aries, the round. Aries, the round. You think about Aries, the round, these are the round's horns, right? Okay? 2. And what do I think about when I come over here? This is Libra. Is that correct? Libra. I think of scales of balance, right? Huh?
Yep.
The scales of justice. So now I want you to see what the association of this. This is number 1. This is number 7. If I start to count around and I go around this way and I come over to here, this will be number 7. You follow what I'm saying? Now I will show you this, and you can see this, and I know you can see it because it's not rocket science. It's just really math. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's that simple. This is the round. It deals with the head. It deals with the right and left hemisphere. So the reason that it's got the 2 horns, the round's horn, is the male and the female. The 2 hemispheres of the brain. That's what this represents. Libra, the reason it represents the scales of justice is because it deals with the pelvic bone, which has the 2 sockets for your legs. In other words, it has to do with balance. It doesn't have to do with law. They twist it, and then they put scales, and then they call it scales of justice. But really it could have been and should have been called scales of balance, because it has to do with your ability to walk. Do you ever notice when a baby is 12 months old, 14 months old, and he gets up from crawling, and now he's not balanced yet, right? He's learning to work his scales. He's learning to get that balance, correct? So you have 2 here and you have 2 here, and it's between those 2, the balance, that you begin to build the rest of the physical structure of the physical body, and it works. So it's hard for us to see that, hard for us to grasp that. And then I want to, let me do this other one right here, this color. Now, Okay, you have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, right? Cancer, and what do you have here? Capricorn, right? Everybody with me? Everybody can follow that? Does anybody see anything in what I just draw? Colors, shapes? Anybody see anything?
Hey,
You say what?
hey,
It is, but it's also one of the most ancient symbols that we have. It's drawn out like this. Does anybody see what that is?
It's that Nazi sign, whatever it is.
That's exactly what people associate it with, and that's horrible. And the reason it's horrible is that Hitler knew what he was doing. Hitler, he got the sharpest people in the world that understood ancient Hebrew. He pulled them together. That's why Hitler stole paintings and all kinds of ancient art. Did y'all know that? There's a movie about that. There's a really good movie about that. Somebody going back and trying to retrieve all of that artwork that Hitler stole. Hitler was brilliant. I'm not trying to validate his ignorance and his stupidity of what he did and what he was doing. But it doesn't nullify how brilliant the man was and what he knew he was doing. He knew that he could get together the sharpest minds in the world and he could create a power that would give Germany the ability to rule the world. That's what he was after. But he knew where that power was at, and that's where the religious community didn't know. Did you realize that Hitler was one of the best friends to the Pope that there was? Hitler was right in, he was a Catholic. He was right in line in the Catholic, but he was into the mystic side of Catholicism, and he understood probably what most of us don't understand, and that is that Catholicism knows this science, they know this art, but they don't want you to know it. They want you to think that this is taboo, that this is the sign of the Nazi, but it's not. And I use these colors on purpose because, let me see if I can read you something. This is a book right here that was written in 1858 or 59. And let me just read it to you. It says, the Egyptian name of water as an element is Ut, U-A-T, Ut. The same as that of the goddess Atai. Ut is the English word wet. And our word water is the Egyptian Ut-er. Can you hear similar? Ut-er. Which is also applied to the ocean, the great Ut, or the wet. Ut, for water, shows the element in a dual aspect. Necessary to note. Now, I say it shows it in a dual aspect. Gosh, if you can hear it. For me, this goes off in my head in ways. I want you to see what I'm saying. Dual aspect, I'm talking, let me show you a word. Hebrew word right here. And I'm drawing it in colors for a purpose. That's the Hebrew word for heaven. Shin Mem, Yod Mem. That's the word for heaven. And I drew it in two different colors on purpose. And you'll hear it in just a minute. I think you'll understand. The reason I say the gross misuse of this word, because I cannot say heaven, but that everybody doesn't think out there somewhere. When you say heaven, you think of space, or you think of a planet, or you think of something out in the solar system. That's what you think of. You don't ever think of yourself. You don't look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, wow, there's heaven. But that's exactly what it is. It's referring to you. The waters above and the waters below. Those are the two aspects of water right here. These are the two aspects of wet. Shin Mem, that's water. Yod Mem, that's water. This water's below, these are the waters above. And if we can get that, it is as we get that, we will get, well, but you on fire is what it'll do. Up for water shows the element of a dual aspect. Necessary to note, the word signifies, listen to what it signifies. The word signifies blue-green. Thus, blue-green. signifies blue-green. And water unites the two colors of earth, green, and heaven, blue, in one. Good gracious. Now for me, that goes off all upside me because I realize this is a way that the Egyptians were trying to talk about me. They're trying to talk about you. They're trying to get you and me to understand that we are made up the dualistic form of water. The natural water, the rainwater, the river water refers to your lymph node system, which makes 70% of the water in your body, and then your blood, the salt water, which makes up another 20%, 25%. And today, the medical sciences know for a fact that you are 95 to 98, if not 100% water. They squeeze you all out, they none of that with water. And, you know, they know that. And this guy was writing about it 150, 170 years ago. We will find, however, that all elementary naming from the Egyptian origins is divine, that is mystical, that is finally physiological. He goes on and he says, for example, the Celtic usage is a type name for water. And at the same time, it supplies a title for the word for spirit/water, or water of life, as whiskey. Hallelujah. Now listen, I mean, you think these words don't have meaning. And we've been kept from many of their meanings. This comes from first origin. Ut means both heat and wet. Can you hear that? When you get something that's wet and you get heat in it, do you realize what that is? I used to say, and I still have a hard time not saying, it becomes a cesspool of creation. And when I say that, what I mean, it becomes a swirling pool of creative ability. Can you see it? Wow, that is who you are. If you begin to realize that, you're creating your world for bliss or chaos. You're doing it. Why? Because you are a swirling pool of creativity. You are heat and water. You're whiskey. Listen to this. He said, the two truths of the water of life from which the name of whiskey is derived, in accordance with its spirituous nature. Did you get that? If you ever get enough whiskey in you, do you realize how spirituous you are? You get a little bit wild, don't you? A little loose at the goose. Sec, the liquid, has a still earlier form and a fluid determined in one aspect by the sign of bleeding. Blood was the primal suck on which the child was nursed, actually the first water of life. Heat or spirit was secondary element to it. These are represented by Kep, Ut, and Shek. That gets into other Egyptian words that became Hebrew words. Egyptians' ideas that became Hebrew ideas. Thus, that's exactly why I did this swastika. That's what Kirby called it. Actually, you didn't call it. You called it did you call it that Nazi?
That Nazi symbol.
He called it that Nazi symbol. And that's a shame. Do you realize right now I have, anybody else has a hard time using this symbol, but this symbol is one of the most glorious of ancient symbols. This symbol also goes back time infinitum. Goes back as far back as this cardinal cross. And they always are laid on each other. So if you want to see the crucifix, if you want to see the man on the cross, that is it, folks. This is it. This incorporates everything in Genesis chapter 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of those 4 verses are incorporated. The hosts are these angels right here that are creating. And I can go through here and draw the Adam Kid Mon. Take the word, well, let me see if I got this. I don't even know if I got it wrote down. I didn't write it down anywhere, I don't think. Wish I had. I I didn't, but let me put it up here for you real quickly. Dalit, that's number 4. Dalit Mem, okay? Dalit Mem. Dalit Mem, that's 600, final Mem. That is the word for blood. That's the word for blood right there. Dalit Mem, right to left. This word right here, Aleph, Dalit Mem. Now remember, this is water word. This is water, right? This is the word for blood. You remember I told you blood, water, 20%. Y'all know what this word right here is? Aleph, Dalit Mem. That's the word for Adam. Then if I take this word right here, that's Adamah. You know how this word is translated? Translated for the word ground. Now look at this. I went from blood, Adam, to ground. Now, in our mind, we can't see association, but they are not only associated, they are intertwined. They are all referring to the same thing. Adamah, which is translated in the King James Bible in verse 7 of chapter 2, for the word ground, and God formed, Yitzhar, squeezed out man from the dust of far, that's the Hebrew word afar, of dust of the ground, Adamah. We think God made man out of dirt, so you think you're dirt, so therefore religion always tries to associate you with just a mud ball, just a low nothing, a worm. That's the best you can be. Not realizing that you are the visible, physical manifestation of the living God. You don't look in the mirror and see yourself that way. You look in the mirror and see yourself as just an old sinner, a lowly worm that's barely getting along, and that's all you're going to think about yourself. That's all you're going to produce. But if you begin to see yourself as miraculous, as powerful, that's who you are. You can't be less than that. You cannot be less than that. You and I create a world of bliss or chaos at our own choosing. Mostly by our words, but a lot by our words and then our actions. Because our actions begin to play out the things of our words, and that's how we begin to think of ourselves. But if we look at these glimpses and we understand the progression of these glimpses, and we understand how that they are working together to build the physical body, to build this machine that's more powerful, the most phenomenal thing, and associate these clips. I had people used to call me about the word ground. They said, Brother Lynn, what do you mean by Adamah? I said, well, it's not hard to listen to the word Adamah, translated for the word ground. It's not hard to hear it and realize it's an improper translation. It's just an improper translation. Because why? It gives you the wrong idea. But if you realize that you were made out of stardust, that's what the word afar means. Afar, stardust. It means light particles. Particles of light. And again, medical science today proves that very fact, that the cells of your body have in them energy that comes from light.
You mean the song Woodstock? We are stardust, we are golden, we are billion-year-old carbon.
Absolutely.
We got to find our way back to the garden.
That's it. Those are the words of the song. I mean, they had it. Sure, they were smoking dope. Yes, they were doing mushrooms. But you know what? They were tapping into the infinite. They were in a, we call it a wild state. They were in a state of freedom. They were free.
Because who in 1969, in the scientific world, would say we are stardust at that point in time?
Yeah.
That wasn't even going on in the scientific world.
No. It wasn't until a few years later after that quantum science really began to shake up the scientific world and began to see these kind of things. And today, now, science is being rewritten. The face of science is being changed. Thank God. And today, science, true science, and spirituality are embracing one another. Whereas science and religion never could embrace each other simply because they were both religious. And their ideology behind them was to take the brilliant minds and suppress all of us. In other words, less brilliant. When in truth, we are all brilliant. We really are. At the real core, you may think, well, I only got an IQ of 120 and I don't have an IQ of 160. The truth of the matter is you have an IQ of 180 or 200. You're just not using it. And that's what these teachings are all about. To teach us, to get us to stir us, to make us, to charge us, to try to enthuse us to think more of ourselves than we've always thought. We think of ourselves many times, if not most all the time, based on the hurts, the disappointments, the things we were told as children. You can't, you'll never amount to anything, when that's not true. We need to embrace a whole different new ideology of myself. To realize that I can, I always could.
Well, that's something, and we've talked about this here before, something as simple as the Wizard of Oz. What did he tell them? Okay, I'm going to give you a symbol of these, but you already had this. You already had the heart tin there. You already had the brains
Of the lion.
of the scarecrow. You already had the courage lion. It was all there. You already had it. And if you watch their characters in the movie, the one that was always coming up with thoughts was the scarecrow that thought he was stupid.
Yeah, I thought he didn't have a brain. Straw for a brain. Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the most modern day fairy tale stories that has truth so deeply rooted in it. The truth of who we really are. You know, when we get to the Emerald City, then we begin to wake up and realize all of those things that we were looking for, we already have. We've always had. Hallelujah.
And then you do like she did. You go back to the place that you'd actually never left before.
Exactly. Yeah. You go back, as Dorothy did. She woke up in Missouri, and she woke up where she thought she had left from. Isn't that true of us? When we start to wake up and begin to realize. So I was going to I wanted to read from Madame Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, but this to get into too much stuff, and I wanted to get into some of the things that she said about. She's taking a lot of the ancient writings, especially some of the ancient Hebrew, and she's talking about the host, as they are called, the angels, when actually they should be referred to as the angels. And if we can understand, the angels are the angels. They are. But anyway, that'll be next week. We'll get on that next week. Any questions, anybody? Okay. Beverly?
The 99 and 900, that you never really got into. I mean, it's
Okay, the
feminine
9 is the sail. That's a single sail. It has creative ability. It splits off, becomes dual. This is feminine energy. So when you think of feminine energy, what do you think of? Feminine energy means you have the ability to create. So if you understand that your left brain is your feminine brain, whether you're a man or a woman, male or female, your left brain is the feminine energy or creative. And that's you get your ideas from your right brain or your male brain, but you take those ideas and you give birth to them. So that's the Tasada, that's the 90. And then the final Tasada gives you the light, life, and love, gives you the totality of the feminine energy, or its eternal or non-ending ability to create. You begin to grasp that. So 9, 90, and 90. And it works that way in all of the glyphs. You know, whether it's 1, 10, or 100. You follow that?
Yes.
So, anybody? Any else? You get all that, Dave?
We chosen in the womb, you know, and it, what did it say, I can't quote exactly that, we are all kings, or,
Kings and priests?
yeah,
Yeah, Revelation says you're kings and priests.
You have authority in the natural and in the spiritual,
Yeah,
period.
yeah. And you know, it says that, it gives us that.
Two different places.
It doesn't just, I think in John, 1 John, it tells us real clearly, it says, do you not, let me read it to you, see if I can find it right here. Let's see here. Let's see, and they sang a new song saying, you are worthy to take the book and you are open the seals. How many seals are there?
7.
seven.
Seven seals. These are all seals. It's your job to open them up. See, they try to tell you this is something without church. No, this is a book about the anatomy of the physical body. You don't open your seals, they'll close. You open them seals, what you're going to find inside there? Here's what you're going to find inside. You're going to find these glyphs. You're going to find all of these deep truths, these deep revelations and understanding. He says to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for you were slain and you have been redeemed. You were slain, that just simply means you were hung on this cross of angels. That was the creation of your physical body. You were slain there. You were crucified. You were crucified on the cross. Okay? You have to grasp that. You understand? This was a cross that's not stood up erect. Madame Blavatsky talks about this in her book. This is a cross that's laying down, and to be initiated is you lay on that cross as though you were dead, but you're not. Okay? Can you hear that? I hope you can hear the symbology in there, because this is all ancient mythology and they understood it. And you know what? The Catholic Church knew they understood it, and so what did they do? They have taken it now, and it's in the archives, or it's hidden behind the walls in the Vatican Library. And if you think that many of those archbishops don't know this, you're wrong. They do. They know these deep truths, but they don't want you to know they know them. They don't want you and me to know that these truths exist. They said, open the seals, for you were slain and you are redeemed to God by the blood of the Lamb, every kindred, every tongue of everybody. Everybody has. And you are made unto God kings and priests, and you will reign on the earth. That don't mean you go anywhere. You don't need to go anywhere. I mean, you just need to be who you are. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I thought it probably was. The other one, let me read and see if I can find this other one right here. Anyway, I can't put my finger on that right there.
There's another passage, Lynn, where we are called a royal priesthood,
Yeah,
a
that's
chosen
chosen
generation.
generation. That's Hebrews. That's Hebrews, I think 13. You're a royal priesthood. You are the chosen
Does that sound like
generation.
king and priest again, the same?
And made you kings and priests
Royal
unto
priesthood.
God. Can't get away from it. That's who we are. That might not be who we act like. That might not be who we have been deceived to think we are. But that's who we are at the bottom line.